I'd like to welcome everyone to this inaugural stream for our Esports Speaker Series presented by the University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union. On the first Thursday of each month, this series will bring in researchers, academics, and industry professionals from the esports and gaming industries. Today, I'm excited to introduce UK alumnus Monon Rahman to talk about his experience with the iRacing platform. Monon's childhood love of racing continued from his academic career into his professional one, where he is currently an engineer for Rick Ware Racing. His use of iRacing has spanned these disciplines, and from his unique perspective, we'll get a look at its use in racing, research, entertainment, and esports. Monon will also be joined by special guest Rajah Caruth, the 17-year-old iRacing phenom turned NASCAR driver. Everyone in chat, please join me in welcoming Monon Rahman.
Hi there, my name is Monon Rahman, and, well, I love racing. I graduated at UK back in 2019 with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And during my time in undergrad, I worked a lot with the Solar Car and Formula SAE teams that we have on campus in order to design, build, and compete with our own race cars. Now I work as an engineer at Rick Ware Racing, a team that competes in the NASCAR Cup Series as well as the IMSA Sports Car Championships. While working on race cars all the time is pretty cool, sometimes I like to get behind the wheel myself and see what I can do. Not that many people really get to drive a real race car in real life, which is why I'm here today to talk about iRacing, one of my favorite motorsports-based platforms. Let's dive in. Over the last few decades, there's been a lot of racing games developed across various platforms. There's been casual arcade-style games such as the classic Need for Speed series, Burnout Paradise, and even the Mario Kart franchise, which will always be one of my all-time favorites. There's also been a lot of simulation-based games aimed for more realism. Flagship staples such as Gran Turismo for the PlayStation consoles and Forza Motorsport for Xbox have been straddling the line between arcade and simulation for years. And other titles, such as Project Cars and Assetto Corsa, have put themselves in contention with these more traditional titles. Some specific real-world series have their own exclusive games as well, such as the NASCAR Heat series and Codemasters Formula 1 games. There are even titles such as R-Factor, which are used as a basis for professional simulators. R-Factor is implemented by some big-name manufacturers like Ford Performance to simulate and develop their own vehicles and race cars. While racing games are only one genre in the gaming world, they can be pretty unique with respect to player input and gameplay. When it comes to sports-based games, there are a lot of popular and competitive titles out there, such as the NBA 2K games and EA's Madden NFL. There's a lot of competitive play out there with these games, and I'm definitely not going to downplay how iconic these titles can be. However, the gameplay can't replicate ball and stick sports to be that similar to a real-life counterpart. Gamepad button controls don't necessarily equate the same feeling to throwing a ball or running down a court. This is where motorsports-based games can really shine. While many play and enjoy racing games with standard gamepads, the more simulation-focused titles will have a significant amount of players use wheel and pedal controllers instead. This provides players with much more immersion and a more direct correlation between their inputs and the output in-game. Force feedback wheels and pedal controllers almost offer a one-to-one correspondence with steering, throttle, and braking inputs, and really likens gameplay to what people will see when racing in real life. As a result, these games are sometimes touted as pretty respectable virtual counterparts to motorsports in real life. And while there will always be some inherent differences between the virtual and racing worlds, which we'll get to later, racing games can provide a level of replication that may not be found in other sports-based games. So where does iRacing fall in all of this? Let's take a look at what iRacing is and how it got separated from the rest of the racing genre. iRacing is a subscription-based racing simulation game. It was founded back in 2004 by Dave Kamer and John Henry. Kamer was also the co-founder of the Papyrus Design Group, which had just made the highly popular NASCAR Racing 2003 racing season game, a game that many fans actually still continue to mod and play to this very day. 16 years since it was formed, iRacing currently has about 160,000 active members across the globe. Members can compete in official iRacing races to gain iRating and add to their stats, or they can host their own custom races and invite others to join. Racers are given choices from dozens of cars and tracks that span across various racing disciplines, such as oval, road course, and dirt racing. On the surface, it may still sound like a typical racing game. Other platforms sometimes even have more overwhelming amounts of car and track combinations. However, what really sets iRacing apart as more of a simulator rather than just a game is its technology and its partnerships across the motorsport industry. For each car and track that's added to iRacing, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make them as realistic as possible. On the car side, iRacing's team works very closely with race teams and car manufacturers in order to receive as much information on the vehicles that they are putting on the service. This includes sourcing 3D car models in order to accurately recreate the car, analyzing each system of the car in order to properly simulate the vehicle dynamics of it, and extensively testing their own models to see if it drives like the cars do in real life. For each track, iRacing performs very comprehensive laser scans in order to properly capture every millimeter of the racing surface. With these physical scans, iRacing is able to replicate all the minute details in the track and correctly model elevation changes, banking and camber in the corners, off-track terrain, and surrounding buildings and decorations. By taking the time to extensively model the track with this technology, iRacing recreates these tracks with a very high attention to detail. So realistic that its scans have even been used to help fix track problems in real life, such as at the Chili Bowl earlier this year. The partnerships that iRacing have are also something that has helped boost its popularity. iRacing has formal partnerships with many of the global racing series and sanctioning bodies, such as NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, and World of Outlaws. With these partnerships, iRacing has brought in many of the cars and tracks that these series travel to in real life, which provides an opportunity for more immersion for its members. Changes to regulations or updates to the Cars in Real Life series are also often transferred to the cars in iRacing as well, which allows members to understand how the racing in real life evolves from season to season. iRacing also hosts special event races that coincide with major motorsports events, such as the Indy 500 or the 24 Hours of Le Mans, in which iRacing members can compete in full-length replicated versions of these events. I actually competed in the 24-hour race at Daytona earlier this year with some fellow UK alumni, and it was really fun and unique to experience the full 24-hour race virtually. By allowing players to be immersed in events like this, iRacing can help members experience these highly regarded events in their own way at home. As a result of this tech and support that iRacing has to offer, it's become one of the most popular sims not only for racing enthusiasts, but also for pro drivers as well. This has made using the service quite interesting. It's very rare for race fans to be able to interact with real race car drivers, but it can be surprising who and where players can run into on iRacing. For example, here's a clip of me getting wrecked into Max Verstappen, who's one of the Red Bull Racing Formula 1 drivers, during an iRacing NASCAR race at Talladega. That's definitely something I never thought I'd say, but it became possible thanks to iRacing. iRacing's name recognition has also surged recently with the temporary halt of real-life motorsports due to the COVID-19 situation. With much of the industry on hold, it gave iRacing an unexpected opportunity to bring more real-life stars onto the virtual world and race online as a temporary substitute to the postponed real-life event. While some drivers have been on the service for years, seeing many of the current stars in NASCAR, IMSA, IndyCar, and other series compete in various invitational events on iRacing has helped provide racing at a time when nearly all live sports have been postponed. With its popularity, iRacing has also been seen as a platform for many to access a way into motorsports. In reality, it can be quite difficult to find a way into racing, especially depending on location, if it's hard to find a local racetrack to even go to. The cost of racing in real life can also start adding up pretty quickly. Having to maintain a race car, transporting it back and forth, and all the consumables that are needed just to even have a proper test session can become quite costly. For those who are extremely competitive and passionate, iRacing has been a means to showcase talent through some of its feeder series and competitive esports programs. With its partnerships, iRacing has been able to showcase some of the best iRacers in leagues, such as the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, which is officially backed by NASCAR and is essentially the highest level of competition with stock cars in esports. Pro sim racers compete in these series and have been able to gain pretty good name recognition from those in the motorsport industry. Some sim racers have even been able to get some opportunities in real life as a result of their talent on the sim. To demonstrate this a little bit more, I decided to talk to someone I know and see how iRacing helped jumpstart his career. Rajah, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, tell us who you are and what you do right now.
Hey everybody, so I'm Rajah Caruth. I'm 17, a high school senior that lives in Washington D.C. I'm a member of the 2020 NASCAR Drive for Diversity program. On the real life side of things, and I race late model stock for Rev Racing in the NASCAR Wheel and All American Series. And on the sim side of things, I'm a Richmond Raceway Esports development driver, and I race in the NASCAR iRacing Series, the eNASCAR Road to Pro Series, and other different competitions on iRacing as well. Oh, and I'm attending Winston-Salem State in the fall, as you can tell by my shirt.
So you said you're 17, right? So that means you're a senior in high school right now?
Yes, sir.
That's crazy. I know, like, in racing, there's always a lot of people who are starting really, really young and all that, so it's really neat to see that kind of translate here as well. So just first question about motorsports in general. What got you interested in racing and car racing in the first place?
Well, I didn't grow up in a racing family, and if you remember, I'm sure you remember it much better than I do, since I was pretty little when it came out. But Cars was really, I guess, my first, taste of motorsports, and I think that really just set it off from there. When my parents tell me, they said I already had like a interest in transportation, really. So I guess it was natural that motorsports and NASCAR specifically would follow that, and it didn't really phase out. And I didn't really realize it till like middle school. Like, okay, I really care about this. I want to make it a career.
Yeah, Cars was pretty much the same reason for me too. I was a huge train kid growing up, like Thomas the Tank Engine stuff like that.
Okay.
And then Cars came out, and that I think for our generation that definitely changed a lot in terms of getting people kind of looking into racing a little bit more.
Definitely, definitely.
So going from that, what was really the first introduction you had in the real world, either with racing, or what was the first introduction you had to iRacing specifically?
Well, in terms of racing specifically, like I started summer of 2017 in some indoor karting. Nothing big, just something to get my feet wet. And the year after, I got into iRacing, and from like June 2018, I just made like 1,300 starts over the last 2 years, just putting in time, and that's really where it started for me. Just not really having connections, not knowing really who to go to for legend stuff, for bando stuff, or quarter midget stuff. Being in DC, not having really any connections yet, iRacing was our best bet, and we hopped on there, and the rest is history.
Gotcha. So I never actually knew about your karting background. So could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that and how that transition happened from karting to iRacing specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't. It was for just the summer, like end of June through August of 2017, and that was at Autobahn Indoor Speedway, and that was really just some indoor karting. And I didn't really do great in it, and it was just something to get my feet wet and get a very baseline idea of what racing was. And that's really all the karting I've really done in terms of competitive stuff. I'll run rentals at GoPro Motorplex or at K1 Speed or whatever, but I really, outside of that, I never really raced any karts competitively, and that's really just where it started, I guess. But I would really give iRacing more of the credit to where I learned a lot on there.
Gotcha. So I guess tell us a little bit more about how you guys found iRacing and what got you really starting your career on that then.
Yeah, I mean, I'd known about iRacing for years and years prior. Playing like NASCAR 15 National Game Inside Line, as a kid, knowing that, okay, there's something better, a better game that I want to play eventually. I'd always knew iRacing was something that I'd want to do, but I never really saw it as a career option until I guess literally the February of 2018. My dad's college professors, another person that my dad had for college, I guess is a way to put it, ended up working in NASCAR multicultural development, and so I was able to meet some people at NASCAR HQ, and to go to the Hall of Fame spring break of 2018, and that's really where I got started, and gave me an idea of, okay, iRacing really is a way to get into sport, or get into the NASCAR specifically. And we didn't get on until a couple months later, but known about it for years prior, and finally got on it.
So I guess one thing that I've always been curious about a little bit more of is how has iRacing, I guess, when you started in 2018 and really that whole year, how did that help you kind of get to where you are right now? And how did you use that as a way to kind of springboard into the real world side of things?
Yeah, it definitely was a huge help, and definitely we wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for iRacing. And starting on there, the competition that really came up within the week that I got on iRacing, the eNASCAR Ignite Series, really helped me in terms of helping me get on NASCAR Drive for Diversity, the youth program the year after, running that competition throughout the summer and into the fall, making the playoffs and such. That was really what I guess helped build me up a little bit, and I was able to really put in work and spend hours and hours every day in the summer. And when school started back up, getting my schoolwork done at school, so when I got home, I could do whatever I had to do around the house and spend hours on end just preparing and improving. And I think the Ignite series was really what really helped me in terms of how much time you had to put in. Having all the cars equal, having Zach Novak, who was a eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion now. Having him in the series, having tons and tons of heavy hitters on real life and the sim to race up against, that really helped help me understand the competition and how much you have to put in.
Sure, and tell me a little bit more about all the little ladder series that NASCAR has, because I know there's the Ignite series, there's Road to Pro, and then there's the Coca-Cola iRacing series now for NASCAR. So I guess tell us a little bit more about each series and what you've been able to be a part of so far.
So there's plenty of different feeder series on iRacing, and I'm really curious in the coming years if they'll eventually create something that will give people more of an opportunity in real life. I guess Zach Novak and Max Cookson were able to test a late model stock last fall, and it'll be really interesting to see what they'll do in the future. But in terms of feeder series, there's the eNASCAR Ignite series, which gives people an opportunity to race modifieds and legend cars on iRacing, and eventually give them an opportunity to test in real life along with the racing scholarship. And so they can, with that money, get a legend car, or get even a suit helmet to begin with, and potentially bring some money to a team and get started racing there. Then you have the Road to Pro series that'll eventually get you to the Pro series, which will help you eventually, hopefully, get to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. And those are some of the feeder series on the oval side. And I'm not really familiar with different things like the Porsche Cup and different things overseas, but I'm sure there's a lot of similar feeder series and different levels of competition out there.
Awesome. And then in terms of racing in iRacing versus racing in real life, I know a little bit of what you've done, where you've done the Legends cars, for example. And then last year, actually, that's the first time we met, was seeing you race at the summer shootout at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So how did racing in real life kind of stack up to what you've been able to do in iRacing? Is there a pretty good correlation there, or is it still pretty different between what you see virtually and in real life?
I think there are definitely some parallels in terms of kind of what you see visually and different car characteristics and overall just racecraft. There are a lot of similarities in that. But at the same time, you really, the physicality of real life, you can't really replicate that on a sim, even if it's a motion rig. You don't get that sensation of speed. You don't understand, or you don't feel when you go off into the corner and you feel the car set on the right front. Different things like that, you can't really replicate, but visually and different things you can feel through the wheel, through the pedals, in your ears and stuff. And even with your vision in terms of peripherals, there's a lot of things that iRacing has done a really good job of recreating and really mirroring it's like in real life.
And then overall, do you think there's anything that iRacing can improve a little bit more? I know they've always been working on tire models and just different damage models, physical models, things like that. Has there been anything in particular that's kind of stood out to you where you'd be like, man, if they could change this just a little bit, it would be really neat, or anything like that?
Definitely. They just dropped not just dropped, but a little while ago they dropped a new tire model for the oval stuff, and I believe on some road course stuff too, the V7 tire model. And I really like it because you have to get heat in the tire, and it's pretty similar to real life. You can't just straight line it out the pits and go and run fast laps. You got to heat the tires up, and there's some different things they got to fix with that tire in terms of different cheats that people can do, and to get heat in it really quickly that you can't do in real life. And there's in terms of different things they have with the grooves of tracks and stuff. There's still so much stuff that they can do, but they're doing a great job so far, and I think that tire is a step in the right direction, and hopefully in the coming weeks, they'll fix the dynamic tracks feature, which allows you to move around on the surface of the track and get heat in certain parts. Instead of being one line on the bottom, I can run up by the wall for a couple laps and get some heat in and start making up lap time, or start fading up in the center of the corner and chopping it back down. So there's definitely things that they can be worked on, but there's always something that can be worked on, and they've done a great job so far.
So then, just kind of backing up to a general scope, what have you enjoyed about using iRacing the most? Is it just the level of competition, the level playing field a little bit more, or anything else in particular?
I think all of that. I was never really like a gamer, growing up. I didn't really get a real game system till like 7th, 6th grade, and I think what I really like about iRacing is, one, the some of the people on there are really nice, and not iRacing officials, but you could race with a cup driver, you could race with a guy with 2 kids and has a regular 9 to 5, and only has time to race 7, 10 o'clock races on evenings, and it's very cool. I think the people is something that I really like about it, along with I guess the frequency of certain events, just because say I had a track meet and don't get home till like 9, I can, if I want to, I can stay up and run a race at 11 or 11:15. There's races every hour, every other hour. That's something that I really enjoy, and you can't get that in real life just because you got to pay for everything. But having the frequency of different races is very helpful, just because if you miss a certain time or something that came up, you can always come back and try to get in some more racing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely what I've enjoyed personally with iRacing, is that it's such a neat level playing field, and I think you and I both at some point have used the Thrustmaster T150 wheel and pedals, which is one of the most entry level pedals. But you can see, I mean, for you were still able to use that and take yourself out really far. And with the Pro Invitational races, it's cool to see people like Timmy Hill, Garrett Smithley, where maybe their equipment in real life might not match, but they're able to still really perform on par with everyone else, or even exceed other people's performance. So I definitely have found that really enjoyable with iRacing. Okay, so the last question here. Just overall, have you thought that iRacing has been a pretty good opportunity for people like yourself with no real racing background or racing heritage or anything like that? Has that been a good opportunity for people to be able to jumpstart their career and potentially make it as a cut in real life with it?
100%, 100%. I think me living in DC is the same for people that grow up in Chicago and the Bronx and LA, that don't have a local track, don't have connections to big time teams or even feeder systems and local short tracks. iRacing is such a great opportunity for people like us. There, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars, getting top of the line computer and wheels and all that. You can spend less than $700 with computer, wheel, pedals, TV, whatever, and still be as fast as some of the good guys on there. And that's what is really cool about iRacing, is that all the equipment, money doesn't buy speed as it does in real life. And at the end of the day, you can literally have a $80 wheel and put in the time and be as fast as someone with a full motion rig. That's, I think, what iRacing is really good at, or what's really good about iRacing is that you don't need to drop so much money on it. You can just save up and get on there and put in as much time as you need.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Rajah. Thanks for your time. Hope you stay safe out there, and good luck in the future with all of your career moves.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully, we had a good conversation on here.
As Rajah noted, there's always going to be some inherent differences between racing in real life and racing on iRacing. There's just some physical forces and instincts you can't really feel when you're racing virtually. That being said, it is awesome to see his story, and just seeing this almost potential new generation of racers coming into the sport without a traditional racing background, all because they have access to a platform like iRacing. It's also worth noting how much time some iRacers spend using data analysis tools and technology to help them improve their own skills. iRacing can natively provide data logging during any user's practice or race session, and it will actually provide a data file that records pretty much every single aspect of the driver and car. This includes data on driver inputs such as throttle, brake, and steering wheel angle, as well as car data such as speed, RPM, and other information that just helps evaluate the overall vehicle performance. These data files can be analyzed using software such as McLaren Atlas or Motec i2, which are actually data analysis software used in professional motorsports. I enjoy this aspect of iRacing a lot because it's actually pretty close to the work I do as a race engineer. It's pretty critical to be able to understand the driver and car feedback that we're getting during any test or race session, and it's important to be able to look at data like this in order to understand what's really going on at each part of the track and understanding what potential changes we can do to make the car and the driver a little bit better. Having features like this in iRacing really ties that immersion a little bit better with the racing world and kind of helps you practice and gain a little bit more experience with the same skills that we use in real life when we're at a racetrack. There are other third-party sites, such as Virtual Racing School or VRS, that help simplify the data analysis and provide a lot of constructive insight and coaching for iRacers. VRS also helps people stack up against pro iRacers who will record their own lap data and use it as a benchmark to compare to. Much like in any competitive atmosphere, any seemingly small advantage can become a huge asset in iRacing. So for those trying to become one of the pros, it's especially helpful to be able to directly compare one's own data to another's. Race strategy can also become a pretty big factor in the longer races that iRacing offers. There are other apps such as Joel Real Timing that provide live data and telemetry for timing and track maps that can help the driver or anyone on their crew help see the big picture of the race and make more educated calls for pit stops and other parts of race strategy. Once again, many of the philosophies and information seen with virtual race strategy is pretty comparable to what we see in real life. So it makes this element of iRacing feel pretty immersive and pretty close to what we see when we're at the racetrack as well. For me personally, iRacing has been a great tool to use in order to learn and develop my own skills. And it's actually helped us at UK as well. In 2019, during my last year with the Solar Car team, we were preparing for the Formula Sun Grand Prix, a competition in which colleges design, build, and race fully solar-powered cars. The competition itself is an endurance event in which teams fight to complete the most amount of laps across 24 hours, spread across 3 8-hour days. Last year, the competition was held at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, the same track that actually hosts Formula One races in the US. In addition to trying to perform as well as we could in their endurance event, our team wanted to come back from the race with the fastest lap in the event and the Solar Car track record. While turning the fastest lap doesn't necessarily help win the competition, a lot of teams try for it on the last day for bragging rights and to show who built the outright fastest car. Months before the event, we knew that our car, Gato del Sol 6, would be capable of breaking the record, which was previously a 4-minute 30-second lap time set back in 2013. However, we would just need the right combination of strategy, drive, and luck to really be able to pull it off. Fortunately, COTA is one of the tracks modeled in iRacing, so in the months preceding up to the event, I spent as much time as I could every week, running as many laps as I could in order to get familiar with the track. While our car wasn't obviously in the sim, I was able to take another car and mod it to the speeds that we believed that we would see. As a result of running so much practice in iRacing and going over some of my replays with others to get some feedback, I felt pretty confident that we would be able to get the record if we had a solid chance of putting a lap down. While we fought through a lot of adversity throughout the week, we got our one and only chance on the last day of the race. My lap went almost as perfect as it could have, and we ended up completely shattering the lap record with a 3-minute 48-second time, nearly 42 seconds faster than the previous record. The track record, combined with our team finishing third overall in the event, was something pretty truly remarkable for us, and to this day, it's still one of the most amazing experiences in my life. It was so awesome to help get the track record with the team just because of how much work and effort everyone put into it. And thanks to iRacing, I was able to have a good enough idea to properly execute the lap that we needed in order to get that record. Overall, iRacing has made its name over the years and has really cemented itself in the industry as one of the prominent figures in racing sims and esports as a whole. While there are always going to be improvements and updates that need to be worked on, iRacing has been able to create a stable platform for race fans and motorsports professionals to come together and enjoy the sport that they've grown to love. I've enjoyed the storylines I've seen come out of iRacing over the last few years, and I've definitely enjoyed using it not only to have fun myself, but also to learn and develop some skills that I've seen be used in the industry. While there's still so much more to sim racing and the sim racing world, I hope this gave you all a good glimpse into the world and how it stacked up against its real life counterpart.
Well, that's some fascinating stuff, Manon. Thanks for sharing those experiences. It's really amazing to see how iRacing has really entered the media cycle recently. It's really impressive to see things like my financial podcast that I follow. They were talking about it yesterday, and what do you think about all the press and news media it's gotten recently?
Yeah, it really has been crazy, and it's cool to see how far iRacing's come from its beginning. It's been around since 2004, and it's gone through a lot of updates and progress, but really, I think this is the most I've ever seen it get pushed and published like this. So it's cool to see the hype around it, and I'm just really happy that people are coming to it now in a time when we don't really have any live sports, and I think it's done a pretty good job of putting on a show for people the last few weeks.
So you talked a little bit about your interest in racing, how you watched the Cars movie. When did you really first know that you had an interest in racing?
Yeah, it's pretty much just like what Rajah said for him too. It really was the Cars movie coming out. Growing up, I was a huge train kid, Thomas the Tank Engine, all that. But really, once Cars came out, started liking Hot Wheels a little bit more. I think middle school is like the first time I really remember watching a NASCAR race and paying attention to it. I was a huge Jeff Gordon fan growing up, just because there was all these little Jeff Gordon knickknacks and stuff around the house that I would find, and my parents didn't know they were Jeff Gordon or NASCAR specific. They would just buy stuff just because they needed it, and kind of having that subliminal messaging kind of pushed me towards NASCAR a little bit more and got me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely had my Hot Wheels and Matchbox kids, boxes and boxes of them. So as a racing engineer, what do you do day to day on a race team, and just racing engineers in general? What do they do?
Sure. So, at a race team, if it's a big team, they'll have a whole bunch of different engineers. They'll have design engineers who are designing parts to actually put on the cars and stuff. There's a lot of simulation engineers nowadays trying to figure out, the best combination of parts and track combinations for the cars specifically. But a race engineer is a little bit more on the prep side of the cars, making sure that the cars are ready to go, and just reviewing a lot of data acquisition on the cars, whether it's at the shop or once they go to the track and have live sessions that they need to analyze. And the main purpose for a race engineer is really to help out the driver and the team understand fundamentally what's going on with the car, and then live during a race, trying to help out with the strategy and make sure that the team is doing everything they can to kind of support the driver and make sure that they're in the best spot they can be for the end of the race.
So if somebody wanted to get involved with iRacing or just the broader world of competitive esports, what kind of recommendations do you have for them?
I would say sign up today. I think iRacing's actually been doing a lot of promos recently, since they know a lot of people are having to be at home right now. I think the initial cost of becoming getting into a racing esport is a little bit on the higher side than just a standard gamepad or anything like that. But for me personally, I think it's worth the investment if you really are interested in that kind of esport. There's a lot of entry-level wheel and pedal controllers and stuff like that. I definitely would recommend starting off with entry-level equipment before immediately purchasing the higher tier Fanatec or Thrustmaster wheels. But yeah, honestly, I would just say sign up and just get in as many races as you can. It really is coming down to how much you practice and how much time you put into it to be better at it.
Yeah, and I think I have seen some people actually do play with like a gamepad. Is that true?
Yeah, usually on iRacing, a lot of people will stick to wheels and pedals just because they'll take it a little bit more to that level. But I've also seen people use gamepads on iRacing and have been able to do all right with it too. And just with games like Gran Turismo and Forza and all that, a lot of people use gamepads. I've used gamepads a lot for those games growing up, and it's perfectly fine. You can be pretty quick on gamepads as well. So as long as you're interested and you put in the time that it takes to get good at it, then you definitely will be.
Gotcha. So how did you first get involved with UK's solar car team?
Yeah, with both the Solar Car team and the Formula SAE team, actually, I pretty much joined the first day I got to UK as a freshman. I think that was back in 2015, I want to say. But a year before that, actually, when I was a junior in high school, I came to the College of Engineering for their annual E-Day, which is, I think, an event where a lot of student organizations and academic professionals will come together in the courtyard and they'll kind of present what they've been working on. And so I came in as a junior in high school just to kind of see what was going on. And I saw the solar car there. I saw the FSCE car there. And I was like, wow, if I come to UK, I'm definitely going to join these programs. And I kind of realized, that aligned up with the goals I had going into racing and all that. So as soon as I did come to UK, I tried to find them as fast as I could. And I'm sure there were a lot of people on the team back then who saw me at 3 or 4 different recruiting events just because I really wanted to make sure I could get in and help them out. And ever since that day one freshman year, I was on the teams for 4 years straight, and I definitely don't regret it at all.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So when racing a solar car, so racing in general is a lot about efficiency, but it seems like that's even more so with a solar car. So what are some differences? How do you optimize for efficiency on a solar car versus an internal combustion engine?
Sure. With the solar car, since it is more geared towards efficiency, we don't have nearly as much peak power as normal any real car would have. So it came down to a lot of weight reduction and aerodynamics, and a lot of electronic efficiency. But with the way the races are set up, you could try to be the fastest car for as many laps as you can, but you'll run out of your whole battery pack within 4 or 5 laps. And so for us, it's really trying to find the highest sustainable speed that you can get while you're getting solar energy to get back to the battery pack, and just trying to maintain that speed as much as you can throughout the track and across the competition. And so for us, actually, one of the advantages was reducing the rolling resistance as much as possible of the car. And again, that comes down to weight and aerodynamics. But we actually had a really special partnership with Michelin, and they were able to donate a bunch of their really special solar car tires. And I think they had like a really high silica content or something like that. And it just made the car be able to roll freely a lot easier than just a normal moped tire. So having that definitely was an advantage. But overall, just designing the car as well as we could really helped us. And that's how we were able to do so well last year.
Yeah, in recent years, there's been an influx of electric vehicles. Has the prominence of electric vehicles helped the development of solar cars at all, whether it's with motors or batteries?
For sure, yeah. I think this year is the 21st year of the team. 21 years ago, the car was built using lead-acid batteries and weighed, I think, twice as much as they do right now. So to see the technology involved with battery tech, electronic tech, motor tech, it's definitely come a long way, and they're still improving everything as we speak. So it has been neat to see how the solar car shapes and the solar car technology has evolved across the years, just with how high-tech some teams get and how they run. But even for new teams, though, they use a lot of the old technology, and as long as the car is built and designed to be reliable, usually teams will do pretty well. So for our competition, it definitely comes down to reliability and making sure that everything you design and build is as good as you can make it to be. And then you add all the additional technology to it.
So for the past few weeks, back to iRacing, there's been some controversy, at various levels. But, we also have seen that it's a very diverse community. And iRacing's been used in a lot of different ways. Is the recent news reports indicative of what the iRacing community is like, and what kind of diversity is there in that community?
Sure, iRacing itself has a really diverse community just because it has members across the world. There's been a lot of races where I've had people from Brazil to Spain to Japan even. Sometimes there's just everyone from across the world, and so some of the recent controversy with some of the NASCAR stars and stuff has kind of shown that even though some people call iRacing a game, it is taken seriously. And even though you're playing a game, you're playing it in real life, and there are real life consequences to what you do and what you don't do. So I think it's been a good reminder for a lot of people that, hey, you still need to be respectful and not be vulgar against other people. Has there been some vulgarity in iRacing? Absolutely. I've seen people get mad at each other just for wrecking on a pace lap, for example. But at the end of the day, the iRacing communities come together pretty well, and it's shown that they're not really tolerant of anything like that.
Now, so I come from a thoroughbred racing background, and but in thoroughbred racing, I know there's spoken rules, unspoken rules, and there's decorum on the racetrack. And I've heard and seen that there's decorum and rules for race drivers as well. Does that type of decorum translate to iRacing, or is it treated differently because it's a virtual sport?
I definitely think I've seen people get as mad, if not more mad, in iRacing than in real life for people not following some of those unspoken rules. Like don't wreck on the pace lap, for example. That's always been a common one I've seen. But no, for the most part, people tend to treat it respectfully, and iRacing has a really good system in place where if you have any contact with other cars or vehicles, it not only penalizes the person who initiated the contact, but it does penalize the person who received contact as well. So regardless of who's at fault, it kind of hurts both players' performance. And so a lot of people take that into account and really try to race as cleanly as they can. And if there are issues, people are able to protest other players and things like that. But for the most part, everyone tends to respect each other and try to race as hard as they can, but as clean as they can as well.
So going back to some engineering, so road cars do see some trickle-down effect from race cars that probably goes beyond just power. So how do road cars benefit from what you learn on the racetrack, whether it's in terms of vehicle efficiency or materials?
Sure, and this is definitely a lot more on the sports car side of things, such as IMSA races and the World Endurance Championship. But a lot of the prototypes that you see in racing and sports car world, they're definitely always trying out new methods or new technology on those cars. And if it's successful, they'll actually trickle it down to their road version cars as well. And so, back in the 90s, for example, carbon monocoques were a huge advancement in trying to make the chassis a little bit more advanced and lightweight. We've seen that technology transfer to not only road cars, but actually our solar car and FCE cars as well. So it's neat to see that trickle down. It definitely is a huge effect, and I think it shows why motorsports can be important and helpful beyond just pure entertainment. There is a lot of R&D going on, especially in the higher level motorsports, such as Formula One and IMSA and all that. So to see that kind of information and technology for manufacturers to not only put in their road cars, or not only in their race cars, but their road cars as well, definitely makes a huge impact.
And so what is your favorite road car right now?
That's a hard question. Technically, the solar car is street legal, so I could say the solar car. But no, recently at RWR, we actually got an Audi R8 LMS. And before I ever really saw it, I know I wasn't a huge Audi fan, but taking a look around it and seeing how well it stacks up to the road car, I've definitely become a huge fan of it. And it's neat to see all the proper engineering. They say German engineering is the best, and now I can kind of see why. And it's been really cool to just kind of look at that car and see all the neat little things they've done with it.
Yeah, and so my favorite road car right now is the Porsche 918 Spyder, owned by the same parent company as Audi. And I like it because it has an amazing hybrid system. It can get like great miles per gallon, but also has great straight line speed and cornering. But when it comes to hybrid systems, is that integrated into iRacing, and how does it handle things like hybrid systems like flywheels or gas electric hybrids?
Sure, and it's cool that you mentioned the Porsche 918 because the prototype car that Porsche makes, the 919 that raced in Le Mans a few years back, A lot of that technology is pretty similar to what you see in the 918 with the hybrid technology and all that. And so iRacing does have a few cars modeled. I think the 3 cars that I know of are the 919 hybrid, the Audi prototype, and then the McLaren F1 car. And so they do model the hybrid technology where you get some sort of electric boost coming out of corners and the regenerative braking that you'll see in those cars. So it's kind of neat to see that. Hopefully there are more cars in real life motorsports that kind of model that and start trickling in. I think that's really where we'll see iRacing maybe add more cars, is if we see more hybrid cars in sports car racing or other forms of motorsports. And once we see that a little bit more, I think we'll start seeing that in iRacing a little bit more as well.
So what games or game are you playing right now?
It's just been iRacing the last few weeks, pretty much. I've been trying to spend as much time as I can trying to get better myself, just because there's some things that I know I'm not great at in iRacing, and I'm definitely just trying to learn as much as I can. And it's been neat to work on stuff, working with Cody Ware, for example, who actually is our driver at Rick Ware Racing. We've sat down together for a few sessions to work on setups and things like that. It's been cool to just kind of get those reps in with practice and understanding driver feedback and things like that. And it's just fun. It's fun to see the time you invest into it either show up with results with wins or, sometimes a few wrecks here and there. But it's really fun to be a part of, and I can't get away from it so far.
Yeah, and do you take any of your real world experiences, whether it's from an engineering perspective or on the track, and does that benefit you in iRacing?
I definitely hope so. It's been fun to kind of apply what I've seen in real world to iRacing, especially on the data analysis side. And there's already been a lot of people who are a lot better at it from the iRacing side, just because they've been doing it for years. But for me, it's been a good way to get a lot more practice in with race strategy and things like that. And a lot of that stuff will correlate pretty well to iRacing with the setups and kind of the strategy you see going into some of the longer endurance races. When some UK alumni and I actually did the 24-hour race at Daytona in iRacing, there's a lot of strategy going behind the scenes, just trying to make sure we don't run out of fuel and things like that. And that's pretty representative of what you'll see in real life as well. So it's been fun to kind of compare the two. And there definitely are some differences here and there, but overall it's been fun to see the similarities.
And so you referred to younger people getting into iRacing and young people getting into racing in general. If you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you graduated and got started in in the professional world?
Yeah, I was actually a year ago. I graduated and I was only 19. I'm 20 now. I'll turn 21 soon, hopefully. Yeah, I guess I got involved with professional motorsports once I turned 20. Last summer, I had an internship with the NASCAR Research and Development Center. And it was kind of cool to see how NASCAR does stuff on their side with putting out rules and regulations and new part upgrades and things like that for competitors to use. And then after that, I was really lucky to end up at Rick Ware Racing. And it's been cool at RWR just because they do NASCAR as well as sports cars. So it's cool to see the similarities and differences between the two cars. And it's definitely going to be interesting with NASCAR's next car coming out in 2022 now. Because a lot of the technology with those cars will be pretty similar to what we see in sports cars. So it's definitely been cool to be in that environment to be able to see both. But I'm definitely really lucky to be where I'm at. I still have a long way to go for sure, and there's definitely a lot of things I don't know. I'm definitely happy to admit that. But I've been lucky to be around people who are willing to teach me and willing to give me a chance, given how young I can be in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, at your age, I was just starting college when you were wrapping up, and so you got your start at Rick Ware Racing, where you are now. And but where do you see yourself in the future, or what type of jobs would you like to do in the industry?
Sure. Coming out of college, my 10-year goal was hopefully to become a crew chief in NASCAR 10 years from now. Hopefully that happens at some point, but it definitely is a lot of work, and I've definitely realized there's just so much to learn and so much I still need to improve on myself in order to get to that level. In the motorsports industry in general, there's so many people with 20, 30 years of experience, and it's really hard to compete with that given that I am 20. So it's definitely been a really steep learning curve for me coming out, but I definitely enjoy being a race engineer because it's pretty close to the role I want to be, and I'm definitely learning a lot being on that. I definitely want to be on the technical side. I think it can be fun. And I definitely want to be at the racetrack in my career, at least while I'm young and I'm able to travel and all that, just because I definitely like seeing the cars in person, and it definitely has a whole different feel being at the track than helping from home. So hopefully I can keep that up and see where I end up in a few years from now.
Yeah, so I got a funny question. Would you play a Thomas the Tank racing game?
Oh my God, I absolutely would. I really wish train racing would be a bigger thing. But no, I've seen a lot of clips recently on BeamNG. I think they have some sort of train mod now, and BeamNG, for those who don't know, is this soft body physics modeler. So you can wreck a car and it'll like shatter into like a million pieces and do all sorts of cool stuff. So I've seen a lot of people doing train stunts in that, and they'll set up a ramp with a train or some crazy stuff like that. But yeah, if someone would make that, I would definitely play it for a little bit. It would give me a way out of iRacing for sure.
Now, do you know if the University of Kentucky has an iRacing group, or how do people kind of organize in general around meeting up with their iRacing interests?
Yeah, I don't think UK has an iRacing group yet. I really don't know anyone else at UK who's played iRacing other than my friend Eric Pruitt and Dylan Pugh, who are the UK alumni that I mentioned earlier. But if there is a group, or if people want to start a group, I'm more than happy to do that. I'd love to see some more UK alumni out there. In general, with the iRacing community, a lot of people are on Twitter. And it intersects the NASCAR community and other motorsports communities pretty well on iRacing and on Twitter. So that's kind of where I found a lot of people as well. But yeah, I would love to see more UK alum out there and race against them for sure.
That's great. And I think we'll give chat one last opportunity to submit some questions, but we're just about to wrap up here. So yeah, Monon, I'd like to thank you for joining us. It's been a fascinating presentation. I know I'm a lot more interested in iRacing now, and I know I've learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did too. I'm excited to get behind the wheel. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Sure, yeah. Just thanks again for having me. I'm really glad to be a part of this. It's cool to come back as an alum, especially a year after graduation for me. So it's been fun to be a part of this, and thanks for letting me talk about iRacing. To everyone else at UK who's graduating right now, I know it's a tough time, and it definitely sucks to not be at a ceremony, but congrats on graduating, and I hope you guys are staying safe out there.
And I want to thank you again. It's amazing to see how much Monon has accomplished in a short period of time. And I also want to thank our online audience and the chat for joining us. Next month on June 4th at 4 p.m. will be our next event in our Esports Speaker Series presented by the University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union. So look for an announcement about that presenter soon. I also want to remind you about our weekly news and interview commentary show, Kentucky Esports Weekly, that airs on our Twitch channel Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Remember your social distancing. I want everybody to stay safe out there. And lastly, drive safely.